Okay, everybody, welcome to the porch. It's Rattles here with my favorite sister, Heidi, and our friend, Anthony.
I
Anthony,
just had to do the
like
wave.
Anthony Michael Russo
Yeah, Anthony Michael Russo from Double
from
Down
Double
Speak.
Down Speaking
Yeah,
is here with us today.
he is. Anthony Michael Russo from Double Down Speaking.
Yeah.
Are you guys fluffing me up? I feel like you're fluffing me right now. You're fluffing me up. Hi, guys.
Hi, thanks for being here.
Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited.
So
And you have
what's
to
the
promise
plan?
we're going to be friends no matter what after this.
Absolutely. We
Speak for
totally
your
love you more
speak for
than chocolate ice
yourself.
cream.
Speak for yourself.
Okay, we'll be friends. We'll be friends.
Yeah.
And the topic, the reason we're worried about being friends, we're not really, is because what we thought we would talk about today is how you can interface with people who disagree with you. And right now, there's not a lot of ability to do that in the world, or perhaps there's not a lot of will to do that in the world. And we're sitting here with two somewhat similar belief systems and one very different belief system. And yet we're all friends and we can speak with respect. And Anthony knows a lot about speaking in general and also how to deal with speaking with people who might disagree. So I would love to have Anthony give us a little opener on some of his thoughts on this issue.
Yeah, so good intro to this. And honestly, I think that you'll be surprised how many beliefs we actually do share. I think that the modern world has gotten incredibly tribal in terms of specific factions of beliefs based on politics, based on what's the most important thing, whether it's animals or whether it's uh, uh, social issues like abortion or immigration, and everybody has their top of list item, forgetting that we are all human beings that are different. So, in terms of different, in terms of what is the most important thing to us. And in the end, with what we see in media and what we see on a just a daily basis on social media, it continues to make us believe that if you're not thinking that my topic is the most important topic in the world, we start to tear each other down. And that's within the same party often, too. That's with Republicans on Republicans. That's with Democrats on Democrats, liberals on liberals. And I think it's just become one gigantic mosh pit of confusion. And to give a quick preface on what I used to do, I used to have a show called The Truth Will Set You Free. It started out as Be the Change. I started something almost 10 years ago now after a police shooting in Dallas, Texas. And I started something called Be the Change, where it's like we could actually harness change in ourselves. Harness isn't the right word. We can find change in ourselves and help the world around us, ignoring everything about who our president is, who our politicians are, and just do good amongst each other. And then that evolved to a political channel, and it evolved to trying to have conversations of people from across the aisle. It was successful to a point, but like everything, it turned into echo chamber after echo chamber because people from the left don't want to talk to people on the right, and then people on the right sometimes scare people away on the left because they want to talk to them, but then they belittle them and they call them names. So in the end, everything it ended up being a fun show, but an echo chamber type show, and I stopped doing because I don't think it's productive the way that we have conversations these days. So.
Mhm. Yeah, and you're talking about the belittling and the name calling and everything that I think is the one of the biggest takeaways that I'd like people to have from what we're doing today, which is that if you want to, even if your goal is to change the mind of someone else, the moment you belittle them or call them names or make them think that you see them as stupid, they're not listening anymore. So even if your goal is to educate somebody, you can't educate someone who's not listening.
And
True.
and
Yeah.
and why would the person listen when you've just shown them disrespect? You've shown them that you're not respecting who they are as a person at all. So I think
Valid.
respect is a foundation for this type of communication with anybody, but particularly when you're talking to somebody who's disagreeing with something you believe in.
And the problem with that also is one person being a jerk leads to a mindset thinking they're all one way. And I face that, unfortunately, because I am somebody, like you said, double down. Like I'm a speaker. I understand it's very rare that I will lose my cool and use names to get to in conversation. But if somebody has said something very derogatory prior, and I am saying, and I'll have a conversation. This is why I had so much trouble bringing people on. Is, we'll get in little tiffs in social media comments when somebody would promise, yes, I want to come on your show, and I would say a simple word like, I would say a simple concept along the lines of, that lacks what's a easy way to say it? Instead of saying something derogatory, I would simply say that that's what I would consider lunacy, which to me is that's not that bad. Like I'm sure there's certain things that I say that is probably not matching with somebody else's belief system. Lunacy or lacks logic, even if it's as basic as lack logic, but their memory comes from somebody calling them a name, and when they hear something lacks logic, even if I say why it lacks logic, they think that I'm being aggressive, which is wild to me. I'm like, you can still have a firm conversation without name calling, but there is certain things that legitimately lack logic. And I just, it was very frustrating because my ultimate goal was to have conversations, and I like a little argument. Push back at me, call me this, call me that. I don't mind it, but at the end of the day, I'd rather have the conversation than not. And it's spilled over the last decade.
Yeah. I think people have difficulty separating their identity from their ideas. So if you say something negative about that idea, they're gonna walk away thinking that you said something negative about them personally when you didn't. You just disagreed with the idea. But so I think that's a big thing is I don't know how you teach people to separate their essence from an idea. And Heidi's a university instructor, so maybe she has some ideas on how you teach that.
Well, I think being explicit, and I know I got that from my major professor. And he was a very harsh major professor, and Rattles can attest to that. But he would preface, if we would sit down and work on a paper together, I would present him with a draft, and he would preface it by saying, Heidi, I love you. I'm criticizing your work. And then he would say, how can you be such an idiot to write that sentence? But he would have prefaced it by saying, I'm criticizing your work. And so I think being explicit and saying, we're talking about ideas. I respect you as a person. And if I slip and say something, I don't mean it personally. I'm just getting excited. And
Yeah.
I think that clear communication and explicit communication is really valuable. And I think it helps people separate. And even if things get heated, pausing and saying, we are just talking about ideas here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that approach.
It's framing. It's just same as like what we do in class when we take a quote. You're framing it with, I respect you. I love this is actually a conversation I just had about a week ago. I respect the work that you did that you sent me, but this is why it's flawed. And and I will explain why. And that's the best that I can do. But even then, people have trouble hearing I respect the work that you did. Hear me out on why this doesn't work, in my opinion. And next thing I know, I don't know how to teach people to just be willing to take criticism. And maybe this is a bigger problem for a wide generation, whether it's millennial, X, etc. We just have been trained to not we have to be willing to take little pokes. Like you have to be willing to take criticism. And it's not always going to be perfect, but your work is going to be criticized. Like that's how I grew up, and that's the way that I think it should be. If it's flawed, I should be criticized.
In the master's program I'm in, I have learned that they have created a whole new framework for critiquing people's writing. And
Can't wait to
the
hear
idea
this.
of it is that it's a bad thing to critique somebody's writing. And so you have workshops where the writer tells you they want these specific questions answered, or that you're not allowed to say anything except to ask them questions. And I look at that and say, how is my writing going to get any better from the
Uh,
suggestion that you didn't give me because you were afraid I was going to have my feelings hurt? It's,
that
yeah, I think so. When you say it's maybe a generational thing or a systemic thing, I think you're right. I
that's
think
why we are where we're
yeah.
at. I mean, in all
Well,
Mhm.
reality. Go ahead, Heidi.
I
Sorry.
was going to say, I guess it's a little tangential, but when I give my students feedback, I used to tell them, stop using passive voice, stop using run-on sentences, stop doing that. And I've shifted my focus. So instead of pointing out the bad behavior, I tell them what to do in the future. And so instead of saying stop using passive sentences, I say moving forward, use an active verb here. And that's comes across as less offensive. Even when I say it, it comes across as less offensive. Or, you know, this is a run-on sentence, so this is how you would fix it. Moving
Yeah.
forward, attend to this kind of thing. And so I
Mhm.
think there's merit in not focusing on the bad, but if you're never allowed to point out this isn't great, this is how you could do it better, I think that's where the harm comes, I think, in society is, creating people who can't take it.
Right.
And
Yeah. And this idea of creating safe spaces. Um, somebody asked me to sign up to get legislation for safe spaces. And I said I wouldn't do it. And they were a little surprised and they thought I was, being aggressive toward their group that they wanted safe spaces for. And I said that it has nothing to do with that. I said, I don't think it forwards the conversation in any way for everybody to retreat to a safe space where they no longer have to see or talk to anyone who doesn't agree with them, who isn't of their gender, race, sexual orientation, whatever it is. I said, I don't think that furthers your cause. And yeah, that was just something that hadn't even occurred to them. It's like this whole thing, yeah, everybody let's withdraw into safe spaces.
as I recall, they hadn't thought of it like that. And so
No,
you
they had not.
disagreeing with them and challenging their view actually opened their eyes a little.
And they were open to it, which is good.
And
Which is
you were
good.
respectful in
Mhm.
doing it.
Yeah. My
So the
friend
irony
Kiyoki,
behind this, sorry, go ahead.
his approach is to remind himself, and because he's a teacher, remind others that everybody in the world wants the same thing. They all want to be safe and they all want to be happy. They might be going about it in a different way, they might see it a different way, but ultimately, everybody that you're talking to wants to be happy just like you do.
Yeah. The safe spaces conversation is interesting because we come from two different sides on some of our belief systems between you and I.
Mhm.
And I was the person that didn't, and I still don't, I'm not a fan of safe spaces, but I had a conversation in an event at a very kind of like a hippie event center in Northern California some years ago. And I remember talking to this gentleman that politically oppose each other, but very, very respectful, very similar to our kind of conversations. Like, I think that there's a certain level of people that can just listen to other people with other beliefs and they can find a way to completely enjoy each other's company without any bearing, which is the way the world was 20, 30, 40 years ago. But I remember having the conversation and safe spaces came up and it's like, I don't get it. And he explained it in a different way where he's like, safe spaces isn't necessarily a um, a room for people to yell at the top of their lungs, and it's this ultra woke thing. He goes, it's a safe space isn't necessarily something designated by a university. It's a place where men or women can just go and feel safe. And he goes, the term has been bastardized by this kind of ideology that you have to set aside a room in a university or whatever, when in all reality, there is a purpose for a safe space to be in a group of people where people can feel just comfortable fully being themselves, saying what's on their mind, and maybe being able to release some of the crap they're going through. So he said it, he framed it in a different way to the point where I understood it and
Mhm.
accepted it a little more, while he also understood my frustration with the lunacy of being like, we need to designate $1 million in funding to a college campus so that they can set aside a room and have a staff member to help people go through their yelling fits as an adult.
Yeah.
There's a middle
Yeah.
ground.
Yeah. I do think though that we need more connection and less separation.
But how though? How do we do that?
I think we do it by exposing ourselves to, or being, being open to being with people who aren't like us, being open to hearing, I'm not advocating for slurs or name calling, but just being open to maybe hearing words that we don't want to hear at the moment. Maybe, maybe being willing to let some things slide as coming from ignorance and not take everything personally every minute of the day.
You know,
Um,
our friend Ray Hyman, who's emeritus professor at University of Oregon, and Rattles and I are friends with him. Um, he talked about the need for people to be charitable. So when you're critiquing other people or just engaged in conversation with them, that you assume that they're a good person unless they give you reason to believe otherwise. And so if they use the word, for example, in the region that I've been teaching in, um, the word Indian is it's a word that people struggle with. Do I call people Native American? Do I call them Indian? I don't know. And what Ray would say is, assume that if the conversation is going well and somebody uses a term that is not what your preference is, assume that they don't have bad intentions.
mhm.
And again, unless you learn otherwise. But if you start
Right.
with the assumption that you give charity um,
Mhm.
until it's not valid anymore.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
there's a lot of value in that because people don't necessarily know what the current jargon is. And Rattles and I, our brother was born with Down syndrome, and I can't tell you how many words have, it's like you get in trouble for saying the words that, are comfortable for us, but it's not what other people think is the correct word. Mentally retarded out the window, developmentally delayed doesn't make sense. There's so many things. Um, but if you assume that people are generally caring people, um, you can also correct them politely, but
Mhm.
or
I'll
maybe it
give you
doesn't
a
need to be correct.
no. Do you? Did I might have already told you guys this story, but there was. I feel like it might have came up. So my dad had MS, and I remember the beginning of COVID when everybody and to also address what rattles what you said, like we just need to be in public with each other. People forget about political
Yeah.
stuff when they're in person. It's social media, it's even Zoom, it's these digital calls that make people a little bit more contentious. But at the beginning of COVID, when really, I mean, that hyper accelerated the division. The division was already starting pretty firm. I would say right around 2010. Um, and I can even go back a little bit further than that because I did used to be on the other political side. But it started to escalate, and then COVID just sent it to this mass rapid expansion of social media and division. And I remember I was referring to something on somebody else's post where something was referenced, and I said, "Yeah, my dad was handicapped," and that's what my dad called himself, handicap. It's still called a handicap space, like park, whatever. And somebody in the comments and I don't know how I let this get so under my skin, but it was about a 4 hour back and forth where this person was telling me that there's no way I had a handicapped father or no way I had a disabled father because I was using the term handicap. And for some odd reason I bought into it, and he's making me send photos, and I'm like, my dad died 10 years before there was digital stuff. I don't know where the like latest photo was. and it got under my skin so much, and it was all because of the fact that I think he was a troll. Obviously, he was a friend of a friend, and at the end of the day, the term handicap, very much like Indian or Native American, triggered him to go, I'm going to go after this person. I should have chosen to ignore it. That was my fault for getting deep into it and so bothered. But it is those, like, who, they're just words. And you know what? Sometimes, and mine clearly didn't mean anything, but sometimes, I'll get people telling me, and I've gotten better at it, but people just automatically labeling me as racist, and I'm like, you have no idea who I am, but okay. And there's a level of words that we just need to learn how to take and just move on from it, because people talk from a very bold position when they are not in human form next to somebody. Very rarely will you see that kind of behavior in person, and that's what we've lost with the advent of social media.
Yeah, I think absolutely you're right there. Yeah, what you can do from behind with a mask on is a little bit different from what you would do if you were just sitting there in front of somebody. But I think some of that reactivity that develops on social media then bleeds into the real world. And I guess we can't control what other people can do, but maybe if we ourselves can make ourselves less reactive, just less reactive to language, less reactive to the fact that somebody put whipped cream on your latte when you said no whip. It's like that.
We've become soft. We really have.
Yeah, in a way, I think that, yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, we can't.
And I
Yeah.
think that if you recognize what kinds of things, and nowadays people use the word trigger, but if you know what kind of things you get emotional about, if you can have enough willpower when you're engaged in a topic that's one of those, to say, I need to slow down and just be aware that you're going to get more emotional, and so that you put your emotions in check. And we do have the ability to control our emotions. And I think that's a skill that parents can teach their kids early, and work with them on letting them express their frustration or whatever, but letting them learn how they can control them also.
When I was a teenager, I came across a book by the author Richard Bach, and the book is called Illusions: The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah. And one of the things that he says in there was like this huge epiphany to me. And that was that there is nobody in the world. I mean, physically, yes, someone can come and break your arm, but that at an emotional level, nobody in the world can hurt your feelings. Nobody can make you feel hurt. That people are going to do what people are going to do. And if you get something out of feeling hurt, great, go for it. Feel hurt if you're getting something out of it. But recognize that it's your choice. They made a choice to act. It's your choice whether to feel hurt by it or not. And he made no judgments as to whether you should or should not, because maybe you get something out of feeling hurt, and then great. But make the choice and know it's your choice.
But that involves self-responsibility. And I think
Yes.
that's the ultimate question, is taking self-responsibility. That it's a hard thing. It's a spiral that we've gone in, and that self-responsibility that we should take to say, we're in control of these things, is psychologically very difficult once it's gotten to this point. So reversing it is very, very difficult.
Yeah.
And I honestly, like, this is, if you want my honest belief system, as somebody that does lean right at this point, I I have what would be considered a black pill mentality, where I don't know if it can be fixed. Conversations like this are amazing and they're great, and it's great to have. It's great to be able to open that up, but unless the grid were to shut down and we have to go back to the old way, I don't think we ever fully correct it. I think we continue to speak, and we continue to tell people that, I might be a Republican voter, but I'm decent. And Rattles and Heidi, you're Democrat voters, but you're also decent, and you're not this and I'm not that. And I don't know. I don't know how to fully fix I don't know how to fully fix it, to be totally honest. And that's
So,
why the last thing I'll say, the way that I would fix it is to worry about the world around you and do what you can and just try to find a way to be happy, understanding that not everybody's going to like you.
well, I actually work with students on a daily basis, and I find that what goes on in social media is not the real world. My students are not like maybe they are on social media, but when they are together, and I'm teaching an online class, so when I say together in a discussion group, they are remarkably respectful. They share ideas, they ask questions. There's a discussion they have about ADD, and lots of them ask questions to people with ADD about, their experiences because they have no knowledge about it. And I have my students do email assignments, and they can pick from a variety of topics, and 9 out of 10 choose the one that's gratitude. Who are they grateful for today? And they express gratitude for their little brother, their parents, for sacrifice, and so forth. And 80% of my students are from immigrant families, and they are the hardest working students that I have, not the lazy ones, not the ones that exploit the system. So I think despite the fact that, teaching, I've been doing it for a long time and I'm getting tired. I think that school is a good place for students to learn a lot of these things, or to express them, or get supported for them. And I'm teaching at a community college, which is radically different than a university. But at a community college, you get people, working people, single moms, people who have lost custody of their kids and are coming back to try and, make a better life for themselves, and Running Start students, high school kids. So there are lots of people sitting in a room or an online classroom that are different, and they're doing great getting along. So I think there's hope.
I think it's because they're in person.
Well, online, they never talk to one another. It's
Right.
all digital. It's all digital.
Exactly.
Still social media. It's just a classroom form.
Oh, so these are not students that are actually meeting in person.
Not the ones I'm talking about now, but so in person, absolutely still the case. But these are people who are all online. All online. We have no like face-to-face connection, except I do with students who meet with me on Zoom.
Got it.
The class itself, it's all like social media. Discussions are just like social media. So I think there's hope. I think, yeah. And one more thing is that in science, there is a kind of an acknowledgement that scientists, despite the fact that there's all these rules in place that should make them emotionless automatons, kind of, not really, but they still get emotionally involved in their theories. And so the joke is kind of, a theory is not going to change until the generation that adhered to it dies. And so in this case, there's always that. We waited out. We waited out, and 2 generations from now, they're looking back historically and saying, "What kind of nutcases are those?"
It's a cycle. It's a cycle. Hopefully,
a large group of Buddhist monastics, Buddhist monks, just walked from Houston, Texas, to Washington, D.C. They did not fundraise. They often turned down funds. They asked nothing from anyone. They adopted a stray dog along the way who started walking with them. And when they would stop, they would meditate with anyone who would show up. In some cases, thousands of people showed up. Not only were they not asking anything, they commonly would provide refreshments for the people who showed up. They were not making any particular statement. They were just walking for peace. And the only thing they asked of people was to consider, when they get up in the morning, telling themselves, today is going to be my peaceful day. And for that day, trying to make decisions based on peace instead of conflict. In fact, maybe for that, even for an hour, making that decision, but that was the only thing they asked. And they walked all that way, and they got to Washington, D.C., and then they turned around, and I think they're still walking back home. I think they're in the process of walking back home now. But that is the only thing they're asking. There is no funding, there is no nothing. They're just doing what they're doing.
The belief system of waking up and just wanting and saying, believe, think about peace and having a peaceful day. I think it still boils down to what we were saying earlier, which is every action that happens in our day, we are responsible for. It is our
Mhm.
choice. So you have if you will not have a peaceful day if you blame other people. If a Republican gets up and says those Democrats they're the reason why, or if a Democrat gets up and these racist, terrible Republicans are the reason why our country is going. If I'm taking it to a base place of politics, but it's also I wake up, my life is bad because of my partner, my life is bad because of this. At the end of the day, if you wake up, the way to wake up and to teach people, this is why I'm so invested in self-help type stuff, is when you can wake up in the morning, the easiest way to choose peace is by realizing you are fully in control of your life. And that might not speak to people from other countries. I think we're very blessed to be in America. Like we have more freedom of not having to worry about, for now, bombs dropping outside or different things like that. We are so blessed to be from America despite its flaws. And ultimately, when we wake up in the morning, it is our choice how we face that day.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Well, I would love for you guys to ask if you've have not had a good conversation with somebody from the opposite side of the political aisle. I would love for you to ask me questions because I know a lot of people that go all the way on the spectrum from far right to center, and I know a decent amount of people on left. I now have a bunch of new friends from people on the left because I agreed with them on one topic, created a video, got 2 million views, gained 8,000 followers of mostly people I probably am opposed to. But I was somebody that was raised Democrat my whole life and made a shift right in the Michael Brown era, I think is when it was, and around 2010, 2012, that area, I made a shift. And I would not consider myself far right, but I would love if you guys have any questions. This is your chance to ask a semi-conservative anything you've ever wanted to know.
So I'm going to put it out there that my significant other is a conservative,
Oh, okay.
and I'm a registered independent and have been my entire life. And so we ask each other stuff all the time and have conversations, like adult conversations about it. So it's nice to be able to ask the questions, because we don't ask, well, why do you believe that? We ask, well, why is it that you believe that?
Right.
And when you drop the tone, you learn stuff. So yeah.
Tone is important.
Mhm.
And also, you use the word why. Why do you believe that is much more powerful than how can you believe that? Well,
Yeah.
how you've already gotten aggressive. Why, even with bad tone, it's like, why do you believe that? Why do you believe that? It's still better than how do you believe that? It's not a
Mhm.
how, it's a why. It's a why because it needs to be, there needs to be reasons why you feel a certain way. And I did not know that, Heidi. That's
Mhm.
interesting.
Yeah. I think, and you just said something kind of profound there, Anthony, that a lot of people I know don't get.
What's that?
That there is a why. There's
Yeah,
a why.
there's a why to everything. There's a why, there's a background and perspective to everyone. Like Rattles, you and I are not always going to agree with animal rights. I mean, probably a lot of most things, but something might be very specific. You've had an experience in your life that I can't speak to that causes you to feel a certain way. I can disagree for maybe factual reasons, but we're still human beings with emotional reasons why we're tied to certain things. It's like, and I should be able to understand. I can still disagree when you give your final reason, but I should be able to accept why you feel a certain way. It's like I used to get this a lot um, when I would speak on certain social justice issues, and I would get that, well, Anthony, you don't understand because you're not black, and I would say, well, you don't understand my belief system because you didn't have a handicapped father or you didn't grow up poor, but that's not how I feel. I do believe that you can understand my perspective if I articulate why I feel a certain way. So just because I don't get the plight of having a different skin color, or I don't get the plight of being an immigrant or anything like that, doesn't mean I can't hear you out and listen and then formulate an opinion based off of what I already know and what I'm learning from you. And I think that conversation ender of you don't get it because you're not this is another bad way to have a conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
That
I
would
think that's-
essentially rule out anyone's ability to understand anybody else, because even Rattles and I didn't grow up in the same household, because when she was born, she was the second. And so there were just two of them and she was the youngest. And then when I came along, suddenly there's three. And so I never lived in a a 2-kid household.
Yeah.
And so nobody has
The
each
exact same
other's,
experience.
yeah. And so that's a silly, that it's not silly. It's an ineffective argument.
And it's used far too common.
Mhm.
You don't understand because you weren't me. And it's honestly, it's very childlike. I hate to say that, but it's what children do when they're 10 to 13, 12 years old. You don't understand because, and it's like, that's no, I want, let me explain to me, allow
Yeah.
me to understand. But you also, the person asking the question has to be open to listening as well, which is
Yeah.
another difficult thing.
Yeah. And I think it's an emotional one also, because if you run out of arguments or reasons and there's nothing left and you still believe it, it feels like there's something meaningful in that statement.
Yeah.
But in fact, there isn't. In fact, there isn't.
I'm going to give you the most extreme version of this. And it's something that even it'll still it kind of makes me think it's hard for me to understand. So there was a Jewish gentleman that lived in Mom's old building in Dallas, who hated Black people, incredibly racist, would use horrible terms. And I'm like, I don't understand it. I like how has he not gotten his butt whooped yet? But his backstory is, it doesn't excuse it, but it makes me understand it. He was working in a convenience store of some kind that him and his father, like a drugstore, when he was a kid. He was an older Jewish gentleman. He was probably in his like 60s or 70s at the time. This was like 10, 15 years ago that I knew him. And he was working in a pharmacy, what have you. Hit 3 Black guys came in, killed his father right in front of him when he was 13 years old. Now, I do believe there's a responsibility to grow past that hate and forgive. That's I think a decent human being type concept. That's also biblical forgiveness, and that's what I try to base my throughput on. But I understood his hate. It doesn't qualify it, but I understood his hate in that moment. That's the most extreme case I can say, is like, you have to understand everybody has a backstory and a reason. Doesn't always have to qualify it. Doesn't always have to mean that you agree with it. I clearly don't agree with it, but you understand it. And when you can start to open your mind to understanding other people's experience have all led them here. There's 340 million people with 340 million different life experiences. And if we can understand that, then we can start to communicate so much better.
Yeah. Yeah. The author of a book called Verbal Judo, and I cannot bring his name to mind. I'm sorry, Mr. Author, put your name in the comments. But he talks about using empathy in his job as a cop. And he's very clear when he says empathy doesn't mean that you agree or that you approve. It just means that you understand the source of the behavior. And yeah, it's very powerful, just like Anthony said.
George J. Thompson and Jerry B. Jenkins are the authors.
Ah, thank you.
You're very welcome. What were you gonna say, Heidi?
Great book.
I was actually just going to reiterate the same point that Rattles made. Yeah, empathy, having empathy and understanding goes a long way. And if you understand, you don't have to be emotional about your understanding. You just understand. You just understand it. And
Yeah.
in psychology, and I can't remember the person who said it either, but it was that our role as psychologists aren't to mock people or to strive to be people, but to understand human behavior.
One of the other interesting things, and I think the modern world of coaching is also life coaching is kind of a problematic because as a life coach or as somebody that is helping people, I do believe dogs. I do believe that there should be some kind of guidance given by the professor. Some kind of guidance given by the professor. They respond very well to me, typically to me yelling. Or the actual coach. The problem is now they're teaching the new school of coaching is to just ask questions and let people guide themselves. And you're just leading them. And that's been for 20 years, that's been the world of psychology. And I don't necessarily agree with that because I think it's part of the whole concept. You should learn how to help guide people if you are going to be a psychologist, a coach. You can listen, but there still should be some kind of guidance. Otherwise, all you're doing is letting people word vomit their issues and going, let me see if I can ask another question to make people come up with more. I believe in some kind of guidance from leaders. If you have a gift to help people, use the gift. And the reason I know that is because one of our mutual friends who's in some of our classes, she went through the coaching program and through a life coaching program, and she had to record it. And a lot of those recordings, she's like, it drives me nuts. I can't, because in order to get her certification, I can't help you. I have to just ask you questions. And she knows there's little things that she could say that would help, but it's against the rules. And it's like, there's no rules in helping people. Like, it's just, and that's part of that whole, like, well, don't give criticism anymore. It's like, just.
It's kind of a misuse of the word coach because I haven't done that much sports, but when I look at coaches, they're not asking questions.
Why did you kick that ball like that?
They're giving guidance. They're giving guidance. They're providing structure. They're encouraging. So I think perhaps life coaches might want to choose a different word, maybe a life questioner.
Yeah, professional listener.
Maybe a mirror.
Yeah,
a life mirror.
Life mirror. Exactly.
Yeah. But
I want Anthony's quote there. I'm going to put Anthony's quote. There's no rules in helping people on a t-shirt.
Yeah, I like that.
I like that a lot.
Yeah. And the poor lady walking across the street is saying, but I don't need help. But there are no rules in helping.
No rules. I can help you if I want to.
I will help you across.
Will help you. Yeah, that reminds me of people getting in trouble. There was a story in Texas in the last year. Somebody helps. Oh, it was somebody was drowning at a local pool or something, and they went and helped, and they ended up getting a charge because the mom was upset they helped their kid, and it wasn't a lifeguard, but somebody saw it happening, and the mom was like, "You touched my kid," or something like that, and they're like, "Mom," and it really was because she was neglectful to the kid and was going and doing her own thing, and she didn't want the responsibility of that, so she sued the Good Samaritan. And it became a whole lot. Like, I mean, the guy got off obviously, but he had to spend legal fees and all these things. It's like all boils down to
some states. I think our state has a Good Samaritan law. I think you can't.
I think Massachusetts does too. I think
you can't be sued if you're legitimate. If the situation is that you're legitimately helping.
Yeah.
I think when we talk about reactivity and all that, I think one of the most effective practices that I've learned from my friend Kiyoki is the Buddhist concept of metta practice. And I'm not a meditator, but it's a great little mental thing to go through where you start by some say start with yourself, some say start with someone who's a friend to you, but someone who's done nice things for you, and you just go through a series of whatever phrases you want. Typically, may you be safe, may you be happy, may you be free from fear is a typical one. And you do that a few times. And then the next thing you do is you try to think those same things towards someone who barista that you've never met before that poured your coffee, whatever. It's just somebody you passed on a street, not nobody, somebody was nobody to you. Um, but the third layer is to try to do it as sincerely as you can for someone who is difficult. And they say don't try necessarily to do the most difficult. I generally bring Mr. Most Difficult into it because it's a challenge. But the point of the meta exercise, the people out there aren't getting anything out of it. They don't know that you're making these wishes toward them. What it does is it changes, it helps you to start changing your own mind a little bit. And yeah, it has nothing to do with necessarily that person way over there. But if you go into the world with a little bit more of that and a little bit more of just wishing that everybody could be happy and understanding that somebody who's doing something to other people is probably not a happy person and they're probably doing it because they're unhappy. Yeah, I think it's a really powerful practice, taken outside of any context of religion or spirituality or anything.
Yeah.
I do think we're dying for connection. I think we want to agree more than we want. Like, I think there was a point where it's like we've hit the pinnacle of like hating each other. And I think we are, and this is the opposite of my black pill kind of philosophy. Because when I did have that post that went viral, I said a lot in it, including the fact that I was somebody that went to January 6th, but I believe the other, like, I very specifically on Alex, it was the Alex Preddy situation, and I was like, what happened in that moment was very wrong. There should be self-responsibility. And what I saw in the comments was so many people just latching on to, I love this perspective from somebody that I'm completely completely against. And they were sharing it with other people. Like, look, even this J6er believes this certain way. And people are dying for mutual ground. They're dying to find that mutual ground. And in that mutual ground, I do believe there is a common factor, which is logic. Like, to me, a lot of things, and this is why I sometimes disagree with people from the other side of the coin, because I do think logic supersedes emotion. We have emotion, but I think logic is the most important fallback. And in this case, I do believe the people on the right were being completely illogical to be like, well, deserved it. Why did he deserve it? Like, because of something he did 2 weeks ago. So we're searching for a core reason to agree with each other, but ultimately, if we can dial down the emotion, understand why we have it, take self-responsibility for the belief system we have, but also look at things from a logical perspective, I think that's another way to be in a better place, because we are dying for that agreement. There will never be full agreement, but we will agree more when we base it off of logic instead of emotion.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Absolutely.
I agree with that wholeheartedly.
Well, so much for disagreeing so much this episode.
Yeah. I actually teach my students logical fallacies in my general psych class, and a lot of them have used phrases like, why don't we learn this at a younger age? And they say that they feel empowered, and they may not use that word, but that they can actually argue with their parent and support their arguments better. And they love it when they can look at a type of thinking and give it a label.
Yeah.
That's a hasty generalization. That's an ad hominem attack. And they get it, that when people make fun of President Trump and his tan, that's an ad hominem attack that has nothing to do with his policies.
Right.
And so when people can start to label things, I mean, knowledge really is power. Knowledge is powerful. Yeah. And even if it just makes them feel on more solid ground when they're making arguments. But I think teaching kids about logic and not waiting until, college to let them know that there's this thing out there called logical fallacies.
Yeah.
Is helpful, I think. And they love it. They feel like it's like it makes them, an adult in 10 minutes when they learn a couple of those things.
100%. And even before social media, the logical fallacy mixed with misinformation or however you want to call it, malinformation, misinformation, started with the 24-hour news cycle. So the 24-hour news cycle where they had to find blood in the streets took us then to social media. And it's like, and it was whoever could come up with the information first. And I read an article it was somebody that was like a CEO of one of the major news organizations that talked about the impossibility of changing the majority's mind on something once information is out first, even if it is wrong. People will automatically go with their first. And this was where I shifted my political belief, was when because I recognized the issues with some of the news and some of the movements going on. Michael Brown was the moment that I said, I'm out. I can't be a part of this side of the political party. Will I still vote for a Democrat here and there? Yes, absolutely, if it's the right person. But when the whole hands up, don't shoot thing, and I'm using this very specific example because it is the epitome of a false narrative. So this guy, Michael Brown, did not ever, like every eyewitness, it's been completely said that there was never a point where he put his hands up and said, don't shoot. And that was what they were marching in the streets saying in tribute to Michael Brown, a guy that had just beat the snot out of a clerk owner 5 minutes prior and was in a cantankerous mode when he was with the police officer. It's one of those ones that you just got to say, some people make a mistake and it is what it is. Unfortunate, sad, but it is what it is. And instead it created a whole movement based on I wouldn't call that that's not the definition of a logical fallacy, but it's a false piece of information. And then that belief system created logical fallacy or illogical fallacies, I guess. No, logical fallacies based on the movement. And that's where I created a shift. I know that there's a lot of people that followed suit, which is how the walkaway movement started. And then at the same token, there's going to be bringing people back to the other side when they start to see some of the mistakes of a current administration. Like it's a sliding scale that can all be broken down to the idea that we are allowed to have a difference in opinion. It's the hate between the opinions that cause the biggest problems.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But it usually does start with false information or a belief system. And this is the last thing that's important for me to say in a conversation like this is especially in today's world of AI, constant news, social media, the person that truly believes that they are 100% correct is the person that I will tell you is the most wrong. Because it's so hard to know what truth is, but you can give your best truth and understand that there's room for error at the same time.
Well, I think this is an interesting place because Rattles and I, at Rattles Prompting, has said for a while now that we need to do an episode on how do you know what's true? How do you go about, and actually you can explain it better than me, Rattles, but like what sources do you use? What's your process? And to have a discussion about just that.
Yeah, I hear a lot of people tell me, well, it doesn't matter because everybody lies and you can't trust any of the media and you can't trust any sources. There's no way to know what's the truth and what isn't the truth. So I should just believe what I want to believe because there's no way to determine what reality is. And yeah, and that there definitely are ways to find out what reality is, although that's probably a topic for another day.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'll join you on that one too. But
Cool.
Maybe our next one.
Brilliant.
It's getting thinner and thinner to be able to tell, to be totally honest. So
yeah,
we got left.
Absolutely awesome having Anthony here today.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
It's been my pleasure. This was fun, and I would enjoy the topic on how to tell what's true and what's false.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah, I'll join you on that one too. That's a very common question I get. People are like, well, how do you know it's true? I do too. And there is no exact to it. So
yeah. Well, let's shut the light off.
All right.
All righty. Thanks again for coming, Anthony.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
There we go. All right. Thanks.
Bye.